So moving swiftly on, we're doing well for time, to Professor Patrizia Nanz, who's the head of, who's founded the European Institute of E-Participation, public participation. I'll let her introduce herself because I'm just making a complete mess of it. So anyway, Patrizia Nanz.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation to this PEP-Net summit and the presentation by Rolf Lührs in particular. I'm not going to introduce myself because it has already happened. I'm just adding what the European Institute for Public Participation, short IPP, is doing. It's in fact an associated member of PEP-Net, and it promotes good citizen participation through research, evaluation, consultancy, and capacity building seminars. The only thing I would add is that parallel to IPP, the foundation of IPP, we started a project which I'm very proud of. It's Participedia, Participedia.net. It was initiated by Arkon Fang and Mark Warren in the United States. We are 6 people in the steering committees and work through Skype conferences. It's a wiki platform. It works a bit like Wikipedia, but there is a sort of peer reviews of the articles. And it's a huge data bank on experiments of democratic innovations worldwide, from Brazil to Europe to China. So far, we are only two persons from Europe, but we're trying to have also a multi-language site, so we hope we'll have a German platform soon. If you have a chance, just go on participedia.net. It's really interesting, I think. For the structure of my presentation today, I would like to say a few words following up the talk by Carsten Brosda on democracy and the health of democracy today, having perhaps a slightly different view, but not so different. Then I will say a few words on what good citizen participation would mean. And the third point would be challenges or misunderstandings of e-participation. Then I would go to tell you a little bit about the situation in Germany. This is perhaps interesting for the people from abroad. And would conclude with a few remarks on what we would need in Germany and perhaps in Europe. Okay, so let me start with a few words on democracy today. I think we are living in really interesting times. And people have claimed that we are sort of living in the third transformation of democracy. The first, of course, was the Citizen Assembly in Greece. The second big transformation was after the American Revolution and the Federal Papers, the establishment of representative democracy, which is pretty much what we are living in today still. And today, I'm not so sure whether this is such a big transformation as after the American Revolution, but certainly technology and other elements of society have changed change the attitude towards democracy and will perhaps slightly change the institutions of democracy. So we're living, perhaps people would say that we're living in a crisis of democracy, in the sense that, as you know, that the Werner turnout decreased, and there's a growing disillusionment with the old established institutions. So there's a growing gap between citizens and the political elite on the one hand. It doesn't touch the trust in democracy as a whole, as surveys showed, but there is a sort of disillusionment about democratic institutions on the one hand. On the other hand, we have an increased interest in alternative forms of political participation. People are looking for more direct involvement in political choices. So it's not a political disaffection. It's really more a disaffection with, to some degree, with political elites. And in particular in Germany, after the sort of symbolic Stuttgart 21, the planning of infrastructure, in particular urban infrastructure, is urgently searching not only for new types of formal involvement of citizens, but also informal procedures of citizen participation. But in general, I would say we find today a variety of experiments worldwide of citizen participation in many policy areas. So my point today is that although this is the case, participation of citizens is not per se democratic. That's my first point. The second point is that the expansion of citizen participation does not per se disturb existing institutions, but also does not per se democratize democracy. So we should really have a close look of what participation of citizens, or any participation, is really doing. So I come to my second point: what is good citizen participation? And I think we should not only look at the effectiveness, but also of the democraticness of citizen participation. And for this, there are several principles which we should take into account. I'm only listing a few, but I think that's where you as practitioners of e-participation come into the picture, because of course you are a promoter of citizen participation, and there are some principles to be taken into account. To name just a few, I think the first thing is there should be room for maneuver, that there's something to decide. If citizen participation is used as a device for legitimizing something which has already been decided, this is only window dressing. And I think that citizens will turn away to these kind of image policies. So citizen participation should have a real effect on political decision making, which is not to say that the citizens must have the power to decide. This can be left to the representatives, but there should have an effect. There should be an effect on political decisions. Otherwise, there is no point in doing it. Yeah? The second point is that participants should have the opportunity to discuss different alternatives among them. So the discussion should be inclusive, which means that every participant should be able to voice his or her opinion regardless of her education, rhetorical skills, and whatsoever. So what is needed is professional facilitation. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to sort of channel these discussions. The third point is that, and I think that Carsten was already mentioned it, it's only participants of a process of citizen participation are, of course, only a small part of society. So the public as a whole, which is the population, for example, of a local community, should be aware of what's going on in these processes. Yeah? So we need some sort of transfer with the media, but also with the bigger population. The fourth point is that participants should represent, and I mean that not in a representation is going to, I want to say, the concept of representation is undergoing a change, but I'm not now using representation in their traditional form. But still, participants should represent the overall population. Abbilden in Germany is a bit less formal. Which means they should come from all social groups, because what happens if you only do self-selective recruitment of participants is that they are mostly highly educated, people with high media competences, with lots of time, and so on and so forth. So the key is the recruitment of at least the mobilization of participants, also according to social criteria or categories like age, gender, education, and migration background. You can do that. That's not particularly difficult. So this is my third point, what are the challenges or perhaps misunderstandings of citizen participation and e-participation? I think more in general, the internet is a great tool to organize and mobilize people. You have seen that with the Arab Spring, but the danger is the fragmentation of communities or counter publics, meaning that you can always talk to people who have the same interests only about certain issues which you are interested in. And the big challenge is to organize processes where participants from all social groups discuss with one another about questions of the common good. The second point is that the risk of many or online processes today is what in Germany is called Partikularinteressen, or I didn't find that really. I think it's something like particular interests, which can be easily mobilized. You have seen that in the dialogue of our future by the Chancellor Angela Merkel, where sort of it's easy to have the highest click rate, to mobilize the highest click rate on certain issues, which happen to be, I think it was the legalizing marijuana and the question of Armenia or something. So not really key issues of political life today. And it's easier, of course, to make a click than to write a position in the internet or to go and meet other people on the marketplace. So the question then is, what is successful participation or e-participation? It's certainly not the number of clicks, but this I'm going to leave to you and to the discussion. The third point is the risk of many online processes of anonymity. Participants position themselves often in a total non-committal, non-binding way. And this is, of course, a problem if you talk about political questions and if you're even going to have an effect on political decision-making. So empirical research has shown, and perhaps this links to your point on trust, that a combination of online and offline elements is probably better suited for political processes. And this is particularly true, but also easier to handle for urban planning or local communities because people are there. You don't have to bring them from all over the country.